Welcome to My Business Matters, the Michigan Chamber podcast.
Hello, I'm Jim Holcomb, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber, and today's podcast host. This will be our second episode of a special three-part series, Restoring Balance, Michigan's Case for Legal Reform. We'll be exploring the recently launched Michigan Alliance for Legal Reform as we talk with the organization's inaugural director, Zach Rudat. He's going to talk about the legal climate and what led to more than 30 organizations already jumping on board and joining this new statewide group. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Zach, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Well, with Michigan's legal system, it's been in the spotlight recently. For those who missed it on our last episode, can you explain a little bit of what the issue has become and why legal reform is such a priority here in Michigan for employers and business groups?
Yeah, it's definitely a couple of different reasons. I mean, over the last couple of years, our state Supreme Court system, our legal system has vastly changed from what it was just a couple of years ago. Michigan's landed on the top 10 judicial hellhole by the American Tort Reform Foundation over the last couple of years. But, I think there's maybe this misconception that unless you're actually in a courtroom or in a lawsuit, the legal system doesn't impact you. But we know that it impacts everybody, whether they're there or not. So right now, the average Michigan household is paying nearly $3,000 every single year in a trickle-down tort tax. So that's costs that are being passed on to consumers and families just from the costs that businesses are facing from the legal climate itself. Maybe a little bit more daunting, just kind of taking a step back and looking at the bigger impact on Michigan as a whole. We're losing out on 100,000 job opportunities annually right now because of our legal system. So that's a combination of deterring investment from outside of Michigan and also stifling growth here of employers that are here already. So all that has kind of just, slowly built up over the last couple of years and has really kind of raised the need for reform for everybody in Michigan right now.
Yeah, and you paint a kind of a bleak picture about it, and we're certainly seeing it and hearing of it from our members as well, the impact of why legal reform is so needed here in Michigan. You talked about 100,000 jobs, but launching a new statewide group, you're the first director. Was there a specific tipping point? You're already doing great things. You have 30 groups already signed on. What are you hearing of why they were willing to join, and what are they looking to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the saying Rome wasn't built in a couple of days. It's the kind of same situation. I think we kind of slowly got over here year after year of slowly but consistent change in the wrong direction on this stuff. So, looking at the change in the court, that didn't happen overnight. Some of the legislative changes we've seen, that didn't happen overnight. I think every different member has different reasons of why they got here or why they wanted to make this reform. But I think that this has kind of been a slow trickle that it has happened slowly but surely over Michigan, and it's just everyone's seeing the cost of it right now.
Yeah, I think it's one of the hard things. Many of us can think back, it doesn't seem too long ago where Michigan had a model court where we were looked upon. When I would travel the country and visit with other state chamber CEOs, they would talk about our court and the stability and predictability. And it seems to be that's one of the main attributes I know that my members of the Michigan Chamber want. They want stability and predictability so they can plan.
And that was one of the points actually we had for our launch earlier this week. We had Tiger from ATRA, he's the head of their organization, and he made that point in our launch. Just a couple of years ago, Michigan was a national model for a good, sensible, balanced, practical legal system, and how that has really changed over the last couple of years from one end to the complete opposite now.
Yeah. I know you mentioned Tiger Joyce, who joined you for the launch. What are you hearing? Are there other groups being formed across the country? Are we late here in Michigan starting? Are we right in the middle of it? Is this a new movement?
It's a model that is. I think we're up to about 19 states, not counting Michigan, that have gone this approach. I mean, I think traditionally before organizations made this kind of coalition effort, like their individual state chambers, like the Michigan Chamber, had always kind of been that lead for legal reform in their respective states. But when you're looking at our neighbors, when you're looking at top 10 states, this is a model that's been replicated in a lot of those places. So kind of the bigger economies across the state and some of our neighbors have already really stepped up and taken the bull by the horns on these issues, and we've been really late to the game. So as all these other states are making progress and they're stepping up, some of these folks that play nationally are looking for new places to come and play games in. And Michigan's kind of got a target on their back because of that.
Yeah. So how do you have meaningful action? Are you going to be a political organization? Is it going to be a lot about elections? Is it a legislative process that you're going to try to engage in?
Purely legislative. And not only that, we were very intentional with like what policies we wanted to pursue. Looking at what's worked in other states, what's worked in not just red states or blue states, but purple states, And we've been very intentional with wanting to get something done in a divided landscape. I mean, it's no secret to anybody that, you've got one party controlling one chamber, one party controlling another. So if you want to get something done, you got to get buy-in from everybody. So we are very intentional that we want to be a lasting presence in Lansing and pursue solutions that are going to get buy-in from as many people as possible.
It seems like whether you're an employer, an employee, or just a retired person living in Michigan, all of our citizens, we're going to want a stable legal climate. We want something that's predictable. Can you give us an example, like where are you going to start? What are some of the first issues you're going to try to tackle?
Yeah, so we've already kind of identified two big issues out of the gate that we want to tackle over this legislative years and in years to come. So one of them is restoring our open and obvious premise liability protection. So a lot of your members will be really familiar with that. That was a premise liability protection we used to have, that if you had a hazard that was open and obvious to the average person, like a patch of ice or a pothole, that property owner would be protected. Yep. Our state Supreme Court threw that out the window a couple of years ago, and now we're one of only 9 states in the country that doesn't have something like that.
So that's going to lead to frivolous lawsuits with that repeal of that.
And you talk to any small business owner, anybody that owns property, frankly, is impacted by this. But a lot of small business owners, they'll tell you they're seeing more and more of these kind of cases popping up on their end. And when you're talking about specifically small businesses as opposed to any other size of corporation, like that type of lawsuit could really impact their bottom dollar, and that could be the thing that decides whether or not they're providing a certain service or whether they're open altogether. So that's a big priority for sure.
It seems like a hidden cost where a lot of people don't see it. It's not an item on a bill, but a business owner, they're going to have to protect against that. Where you used to have a legal protection, now you don't.
Right. Yep. So that's one big priority out of the gate. Our second one is implementing some transparency measures on practice of judicial financing practice called third-party litigation funding. So basically what's happening here is if you're a financer, you approach a plaintiff, you approach a law firm, and you say, hey, I'll finance your lawsuit. In exchange for financing it, I'll get a cut of the settlement. So it might on face value sound like it's not that big of a deal, but it's adding fuel to the fire. Because it's such a new financing practice here in Michigan, this has kind of slowly started working its way across the country the last couple of years. We have absolutely nothing on the books on it here in terms of regulation.
So this could just be anybody they can say. It's almost like an investment vehicle for them. I have X amount of dollars. I'm going to either go and say, hey, Zach, I know you have this lawsuit going on. Let me fund that for you. Or you can go to a law firm, I believe, and say, hey, we'll sponsor this law firm. And, they're kind of gambling on what the outcome is.
Yeah, some people, it's really almost kind of very similar to Wall Street where you find a lot of different stocks to invest in. Some people might go try to find 10 or 12 different lawsuits that they invest in, and some they might get returns on and some they might not get returns on. But because it's such a new practice and we have nothing on the books here, you could have circumstances where a plaintiff has their case being financed and they have no idea about it.
Oh, so this isn't disclosed? I would assume that if somebody's doing this, usually in the court, all the parties know who each other is and kind of what's going on.
There can be circumstances where a plaintiff doesn't know. More often than not, they will, but sometimes they sign up for these things and they don't read the fine print of what they're agreeing to. So, you have some cases like there's a case out in New York, a gentleman that was involved in the 9/11 cleanup effort. He was trying to get his hands on some compensation funding for that, and he was in a lawsuit and utilized this practice, and he won, but he didn't see a penny of the settlement. So it's predatory to folks that are in lawsuits. It's driving up lawsuits to employers large and small. And probably the more scary thing here is this creates a huge national security risk. So, if you're a financer in China, you're a financer in Russia, and you're on the receiving end of tariffs and you want to retaliate, this is a way to come into Michigan and retaliate and undermine Michigan manufacturing, agriculture, you name it, and do so completely undetected.
So I assume they undermine it because my assumption is if I'm financing a lawsuit, then I get access to all the documents. If I'm a foreign entity and I say, hey, my competitor, get a lawsuit ginned up against them, they go in, and then maybe you get intellectual property, you get strategy of the company. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, so even if the case itself isn't successful, you're right, the financer can get their hands on a lot of data through discovery on this, and they can influence the case itself. So a lot of times that financer, since they're getting a cut of the settlement, they want to try to steer that towards a bigger, larger settlement itself. So
if somebody's financing a lawsuit, who makes the decision of when to settle or what decisions are being made with legal counsel? Is it the people paying for the lawsuit or the person who's involved in the lawsuit?
So right now, that financer has the ability to have influence and impact on the case. So they have a seat at the table on that conversation. So the reforms that we're looking at ensuring that that financer is registered with the state of Michigan and they're disclosed with all parties within the lawsuit. It's capping what that settlement, that siphon that they get at the end of the case to make sure that the person who's actually in the lawsuit's getting the funds.
So the contingency, effectively, what their rate of return can be.
There's that. There's banning that influence of the case itself, so that, like you said, that funder is purely just financing and nothing else. And it also bans that foreign entities of concern from engaging in this practice.
Is this a federal issue or a state issue? I'm wondering why the court just doesn't do something for this.
Yeah,
we have court rules that say you have to operate under these prescriptive guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly impactful at both state and federal courts. There's been discussions in D.C. on these issues, and a lot of other states. But because it's so brand new, a lot of people at both the federal and state level are just starting to have these conversations and just starting to enact laws. But it's states as progressive as Illinois or California have made progress on this. States as conservative as Tennessee have made progress on this issue. Like it's found progress in red, blue, purple states. And same with our open and obvious premise liability protection. 41 other states have figured this out. So a lot of what we're looking at here is pretty common sense measures that, states from a wide range of political makeups have made progress on.
And it's unfortunate, but it seems like you do have to have a group like yours trying to take this action here in the state. As I recall, reading through some of your materials, it seemed too that I believe the federal district courts in Michigan, the Eastern and Western, maybe they prescribe it in their court rules, but the state has it. So we have different systems. And again, you could just play games. Am I going to file a state lawsuit or a federal lawsuit? Because sometimes claims can go in various venues.
Yep, and like you said, it's just all these things collectively just create a lot of unpredictability for business owners, for families, for anybody that touches the legal system. It's adding to more uncertainty for everybody right now.
What do you say to the people? I know some of the opponents will say, hey, these financing situations just make sure that justice can be available to everyone, that without this, there'll be people turned away at the courthouse door and their issue will never be considered.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that we're looking at right now is going to interfere with someone's ability to go to a courtroom and try to seek justice. I mean, if somebody feels like they have been harmed by a property hazard, they still, under this reforms, they still have the ability to go to the courtroom and have that conversation and that debate. The reforms that we're looking at is an outright banning third-party litigation funding. In fact, no state in the country has outright banned it. This is just, I joke with people that the justice system is called the justice system and not the finance system for a reason. Like the whole point of the system is to be a place for impartial justice and nothing else. So what we're looking at here is not looking to interfere with someone's ability to seek justice. It's just making sure that bad actors aren't taking advantage of people in a bad situation.
What type of impact would this type of reform have on just the court's docket? Is our court getting clogged up with frivolous lawsuits? Is this going to help alleviate that? I know a lot of people complain that it takes so long to get their case heard.
I mean, theoretically, it should kind of reduce that court backlog. Outside of that, a lot of times, unfortunately, when business owners or anybody's on the receiving end of this, sometimes they make the calculation where it's like, hey, it might be easier or cheaper for me to just settle as opposed to go into a case. But just all things considered, I mean, it's going to reduce backlog in courts for sure, but it's just going to have to put business owners in a position where they don't have to choose the lesser of two evils. So,
as you put this together, how long have you been working on formulating this, and who are the people? I know, I think I read that you had 30 or so groups already sign on, so that's a great first step. What brought them together, and are they all from one industry? Is it a diverse coalition? What's the makeup?
It's pretty diverse. I mean, we've got the Michigan Chamber, we've got Small Business Association, NFIB. We've got folks from various different sectors, energy, transportation, infrastructure, agriculture. We represent a very wide swath of the state's economy, and that really kind of helps us make the case. Like, these issues don't impact one industry or one sector or one region of the state. These really impact everybody, even on the consumer end too, whether they realize it or not. So the benefit of building out that coalition just helps us when we're making the case, when we're talking to lawmakers. Like, this is impacting everybody. It's impacting your top employers in your districts. It's impacting every block and corner in your streets as well, in your communities. So just having that strength of numbers and being able to tap into all these different industries, and they can come with their association members and say, here's my story of how I'm impacted by this system or that system. It just helps really humanize the conversation at large and just really kind of identify the human impact that this has on everyone's day to day.
You mentioned before, it's not a political organization. Do you view the issues that you'll be working on, you mentioned too, right out of the gate, third-party litigation funding and open and obvious, do those break down along partisan lines at all, or are these just common sense reforms that are going to improve the system?
I would say they're common sense. I mean, like I said, there's 41 other states across the country that have implemented this on the open and obvious, and that's a wide range of some of the most progressive to some of the most conservative to some of the most purple states across the country. Third-party litigation funding, same thing. You're seeing progress in red states, blue states, and you name it. So there have been, from both sides of the aisle across the country, folks that have started these conversations and pursued solutions. And like I said, we come in very wide-eyed of knowing what the makeup is in Lansing and recognizing that we want to ultimately get a solution across the finish line here.
Have you talked to any legislators yet? Do you have any initial responses for them on how they're either viewing your organization or the issues you're going to try to talk to them about?
Yeah, I mean, we just launched yesterday, so we're just starting to have those conversations with lawmakers, but there certainly seems to be a lot of interest and appetite on third parties specifically. I mean, that bill was just introduced yesterday, and Representative Harris, the sponsor, got 24 co-sponsors already. So
great.
There's a huge appetite just to have this conversation. I think it's one of those things that when you describe it to somebody, they're like, how is this legal already? So there seems to be a lot of interest on both sides of the aisle. There seems to be a lot of appetite to have this conversation and try to identify a solution.
Yeah, I was actually at an organization yesterday, and we were having a conversation, and they were referencing the launch of your group, and that was a prevalent kind of theory or feeling is, how is this legal? How can people gamble on lawsuits and invest? And then whether you like that or not, there was a lot of discussion. Maybe that seemed unethical, that a non-party was going to have an impact on how things get settled or what the strategy is. But just that the judge or some of the parties may not know of the influence or even the impact that it could have.
Yeah. Or even the plaintiff themselves. I mean, I can't imagine being in a lawsuit and not even knowing that my case is being financed or influenced by another person that I don't even know. It's
just one of the, the legal system is very daunting for many people. If you aren't an attorney, and even if you are, there are so many nuances to the practice of law and how things operate. If you aren't dealing with it every day, it'd be very hard for the general citizen who says, okay, now I'm in this lawsuit, and to understand the entire process and even know what to look out for or how to protect their own interests. That's why you hire an attorney, because they're supposed to protect you.
Yeah, generally, they're probably, unless you're an attorney, you're not in the courtroom that frequently or that often. For them, it's a brand new experience oftentimes. So, they have to kind of lean on those experts on something in that situation.
Well, you're a new organization. You're just getting this off the ground. If you kind of put your eyes forward a couple years, what does success look like, whether for you or our legal system here in Michigan?
I think success looks like getting these policies enacted. I think success looks like that tort tax costs coming down for families and consumers and for businesses. I think success looks like, business owners, whether you're large or small, just having more consistency, more predictability in your day-to-day operations. I think that's ultimately what success looks like, is making Michigan a whole a lot more competitive and attractive for not just businesses, but people and families to invest in plant roots in here in Michigan.
Yeah, if there are people listening to our podcast today, because we're getting close on time here, if you're a general individual, if you're a business owner, if you're an employee, where do they get more information? How do they learn more about not only your organization, but maybe what's happening with the legal climate in Michigan?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, following what's happening in the legislature and the courts, but also visiting our website, the MI Alliance for Legal Reform.com. Mm-hmm. We're also on Facebook. We just created that page recently to keep updates, but also for folks that are our members, they're getting updates routinely from us on what we're going to be doing. So folks that are joining our coalition, being members and being a part of this, they're going to get regular updates from our organization as well. So staying engaged, following us on Facebook, visiting our website, and considering being a member.
Well, sure. I think this is absolutely one of those issues where engagement is really important. If we want to have change in Michigan, if we want a stronger and more predictable and stable legal climate, it takes people willing to join an organization or lean in and make sure they understand the facts and be able to help communicate to you maybe some changes you aren't even aware of that would be beneficial.
Yeah. Yep. You don't win from the sidelines, that's for sure.
Exactly. Well, a very special thanks, Zach. Appreciate you talking with us today about the Michigan Alliance for Legal Reform and the efforts to restore balance and predictability to our legal system. And thanks to all of you for listening. Be sure to catch part 3, where we talk about a couple key policy reforms underway right now in the state of Michigan. Subscribe and like our podcast for easy notifications. Until then, you can find more information about legal reform in Michigan at michamber.com.